Hey, everybody, welcome. Cyber Minds podcast, Hunt Club podcast, Cyber Minds show. Mark Wojtasiak, aka Woj here, product research and strategy at Vectra. This is going to be a fun one. Topic near and dear to my heart, NDR, network detection and response. I'm joined by two super fun people. Um, it's going to be a fun conversation. Chris Ray, Nicole Drake. Why don't you both? Chris, we'll start with you. Introduce yourself to the audience.
Sure. So obviously, I'm Chris Ray. I'm a field CTO here at GigaOm. It's an analyst firm, if you're not familiar with us. Practitioner-led, which is our differentiator. I'm a former practitioner myself. I've worked just about every role you can imagine in operations, and then lateraled over into security at some point. Um, you know, Large enterprise, startups, everything in between. My help desk days were spent eating lunch, reading Cisco's CCNA book, trying to just scrape by and figure out what my next step is. I've always loved the network side of the house,
Yeah.
and so that's been a major component in my background and experience. Worked at Fortinet for a while as professional services engineer, and I loved the insights from the network perspective. Not to say there isn't some fun to be had with endpoint and cloud and identity, but when I was a kid looking at a computer, it just blew my mind that this thing here can talk to something on the other side of the world. How does that black magic work?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, network is near and dear to our hearts here as well. Yeah. Nicole, you live and breathe network as well. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Yes, thanks, Woj. So I'm Nicole Drake. I'm a senior product marketing manager here at Vectra AI. I've been working in tech and different software and SaaS companies, similar to Chris, various startups, large enterprises, distribution, you name it. But the last stint of it has been in cybersecurity with an emphasis in network. We love the network and it's so important and critical nowadays, especially for cybersecurity efforts and protecting organizations. So happy to be here with you guys.
Good segue to network security zealots. Um, Chris, I'll have you both kind of chime in on this one in terms of I love the practitioner-led research you guys do at GigaOm. I think it's awesome. It's unfiltered, unbiased kind of truth. And you guys been researching network detection and response for several years now.
Yeah,
NDR
it's
for
been one
those
of our
category
core
lovers.
staple
Yeah.
reports.
Yeah, one of the core category acronym NDR. Um, I don't know how many people are familiar with NDR. Like, how would you describe it? Like, what is NDR through the eyes of like a practitioner, field CTO, networking guy?
Yeah, so I try to explain things by relating them to something you may already know. I think a lot of people are familiar with EDR. EDR is the endpoint centric view of the attacker landscape, trying to detect uh, telemetry, correlate different actions on the endpoint, but it's blind to anything that happens in between endpoints or anything that's inbound, outbound, egress, ingress. So the way I think about NDR is it exposes that stealthy, evasive attack that bypasses traditional security tooling. It can, in the right circumstances, give unmatched visibility into every network event, including those devices and assets that are not covered by your EDR if it's deployed, or by the telemetry may not be collected by your SIEM, XDR, your data lake, whatever it is, or data swamp if it's poorly managed.
Oh, source of truth. I've heard it referred to that many a times. It's the source of truth. Attackers can't hide from the network. They can't evade it. They can't, it's a covert operation. Nicole, what's your definition of NDR?
Yeah, I mean, to me, NDR is a cybersecurity solution that ultimately reduces risk for the organization. So provides coverage, visibility across the entire cyber kill chain, especially like Chris mentioned. A lot of folks are more familiar with EDR. So if something bypasses the EDR, the NDR should catch it, for example, as well as providing necessary insights needed to act on those, threats that are coming in and stop them ultimately. Is my
No,
summary.
no, it's spot on. I can't argue with anything you say. But I want to talk about, Chris, like you talked about, I want to dive into like the network. Like it's probably one of the, if not the most, I would argue like a lot of security practitioners like yourself, Chris, turned researcher, turned field CTO, like you grew up in the network, right?
Yep.
It was like the beginnings of security is kind of was rooted in the network. What the heck is the network today? Like when you think of
Yeah.
network, you think of like, oh, Ethernet cables connecting, machines in a data center or in an office or whatever. Like the picture in my mind immediately goes to like on-prem old network, right? But I want to get your perspective as a practitioner, researcher, GigaOm. Like when you guys hear the word network, even say the word network, what are you talking about when you say network?
Yeah, and that's a really good way to start it that's true. The network is that stuff you said, the physical layer, layer 1, right? Um, we have that OSI model just burned into our brains, I'm sure, layer 1s through 7.
Yeah.
The network is everything in there. I'm not going to enumerate it simply because honestly, I forget, the less important layers and their details like layer 5, layer 6, sure, sessions and such, but those are segmented in that way. They're logically grouped on purpose to help us understand and chunk it out in a way that makes sense. But the network it's the communication between everything that's digital. So that could be a physical medium, it could be a wireless medium. That could be in an OT or an IoT environment. That could be the crazy stuff that you see there. That's everything on the internet. That's everything in the cloud. Any digital transmission should be considered network medium at this point. So, taking a step back and talking about it from a detection and response perspective, you have to start to think, well, I don't know the percentage off the top of my head. How much traffic on the internet is encrypted right now? Like it's got to be high 90s, right? Not 100%, but pretty darn close to 100%
Yeah.
of the traffic's encrypted. That doesn't mean that it's a blind spot. For a long time, uh, I remember working with people that would just say, "Well, once it leaves our perimeter, once it leaves our edge, it's encrypted. We have no visibility. We have no idea." That's just not true. Dig into layer 3, layer 4, and you can see there's a lot of data, metadata in the headers. There's a lot of value in that. There's inferences to be gleaned from looking at flow sizes and packet sizes and routing and all of the fun stuff that goes with that. That can tell you quite a bit about what may be happening, what malicious activity could be detected.
Yeah. Nicole, what do you think of when you hear the word network?
I agree with Chris. It's obvious, and you, Woj, as well, that you mentioned, not just the physical kind of traditional definition. It's literally anywhere where your data and your applications live. So it's often hybrid nowadays. We're in a hybrid world. So cloud identities, both machine and end user identities, SaaS based, you name it, cloud, OT, IoT. Chris mentioned all of this. So to me, it's an expansive attack surface. It's not just a piece of hardware anymore.
Okay,
I'm
so
just really
network's
happy
everything.
we
Yeah.
we we made it through that without saying 5G.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like give ourselves kudos.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me this. Okay, so now we agree on like we have a consensus, I think, on what the definition of network is. And I think the definition of network, I don't know if that's truly embraced industry wide, that is the definition of network, right? That it has gone beyond, just like anything else in technology or security, it's evolved, right? It's constantly evolving. It's extremely dynamic, et cetera, et cetera. let's get into like some of your research, Chris, on the GigaOm side. You recently released a radar. You've released a radar and NDR for a number of years now. And what do you see changing in the NDR space relative to like how we've described the network? The network's evolving, it's changing, it's kind of you said it's everything, right? It's the connection between everything. Any digital transmission is happening on the network, no matter where, when, how, whatever. How have you seen network detection and response evolve over the years?
Yeah, so that's I was hoping we could get through a podcast or a webinar or any sort of presentation, any media without saying it. AI is impacting it, obviously. 3-4 years ago, mm, it was a twinkle in the vendor's eye, right? There's some promise here. There's some fun things that could be done, but for now, let's stick with the heuristics. Let's stick with what we know works. But now, looking at, and I'm pulling it up right now so I can compare version 1 of our report, which had I'm talking about table stakes right now. So when I say table stakes, I mean this is the bare minimum of what you need to be considered an NDR. Our table stakes for the first version of this report was comprehensive threat detection, non-signature based threats detection, north, south, east, west monitoring, built-in incident response. Keep those 4 things in mind. Now, if we jump to, Google's failing me. It's not loading. If we jump to version 3, we now see all of those are still there. But now we also look for out of the box analysis, built-in incident response, intelligent anomaly detection, and metadata threat detection. So the trend there, the theme is now we have obviously network provides an abundance of telemetry. I mean, it's if anything, network is going to be overwhelming most SOC analysts. There's just too much data there. So what do you do with all that data? You need something that can intelligently understand what it sees, and that's AI, and that's
Yeah.
really probably the biggest change that I've seen from version 1 to we're in version 3 or 4 now. Is the impact that machine learning, that even computer vision in some aspects is having in the network detection and response space.
Why is that? Either of you.
Like a Yeah,
Why?
Nicole, if
Like what?
if you want, I have my thoughts, but I've been hogging this, so go ahead, Nicole, if you want to jump in.
I mean, I think, AI is helping things making things more efficient because there's so much data and attackers are changing their techniques every day. They're also utilizing AI, as we know, to further their attacks. So I think it's just a tool right now to help us, especially since, you know, there's a lot of known IOCs that everybody can access. Anybody, any Joe Schmo can Google and, there's Reddit threads and whatnot. But I think it's just access, one, and two, just making it more efficient for, security measures.
It's your
Yeah,
take, Chris.
the way I look at it is AI is hunting. It's hunting threats and it's smashing silos. It's cross referencing data at machine speed. There's no way a human can keep up with that, and it's not just fast; it's persistent and it's relentless. It's correlating millions of signals. It never gets tired, never needs a coffee break, it never makes mistakes. Well, no, I can't say that. It makes mistakes. It doesn't make human mistakes, and it catches the subtle little nuances that are often very difficult to catch that you'll need, somebody that's in the top 2% of the field in order to identify. I think that's really the impact that AI is making, not just an NDR, but if we talk about detection and response as a whole, it's that giant data set and finding the needle in the needle stack.
I ask you again. What? So why? Is it because there's so much data you need AI to analyze it all, or like why AI in the world of NDR is such the dynamic evolution of NDR? And I'm sure I'll ask you
Yeah.
like where you think NDR is going, but I heard efficiency, I heard speed. Why does the SOC need efficiency and speed?
From an attacker's perspective, I would count on chaos and noise to remain hidden, right? I mean, That's your cloak. That's your hoodie that you're throwing up over your head to remain unidentified. Uh, AI turns that chaos and noise into a laser focused detection that actually gets smarter the more data you throw at it, unlike a human, which gets burned out.
Cole,
Yeah,
anything?
I would agree. I mean, I think AI is helping us cut the silos. I mean, a lot of folks still, view NDR as a traditional just on-prem, and attackers know that. So they're taking advantage of that, especially for like lateral movement kind of attacks, even advanced C2 attacks. And so, I think AI is helping kind of cut that down, not just on alert noise, like Chris said, but on the investigation side as well to help correlate all of those things really, really quickly. So then, SOC teams can act faster and respond.
Yeah, and I'm a visual learner. Like,
Yeah.
I tore apart a dirt bike motor when I was 9 and put it back together. Took me months, but I did it because I could see the things in front of me and I could touch and feel them and I could figure it out.
Yeah.
So a lot of my analogies are visual, and the thing that keeps bouncing around in my head when I'm trying to explain this is if modern security is a puzzle, just jumbled up, thrown on a table, telemetry, it's the mountain of pieces in front of you. AI is the tool that's actually building the picture in real time as the puzzle changes and the threats evolve. Hopefully that makes sense.
It's almost like a bunch of blank puzzle pieces. I love that analogy. It's like a bunch of blank puzzle pieces, but once you put them together, the picture emerges. And you don't even know what you're going to see. Because the thing about
Yeah.
a puzzle is it's like, here's a picture of what you need to put together. But in this case, you don't know necessarily what the picture is because
That
of the
reminds me,
stealthiness of the attacker, right?
yeah. That movie, The Accountant, right? The
Yeah.
beginning where he's a
Yeah.
child and he's putting the
Yeah.
puzzle together and it's just backwards and he
Yeah.
doesn't
It's
see it.
upside down.
He
Yeah.
just he just sees the nuances of the pieces, right? And that's similar to how AI works. Is it's not a human looking at, MAC addresses and human context and behaviors. It's looking at the shape of the pieces of the puzzle and saying this fits with that one, so therefore this must be next.
Yeah. I'm often, I love this analogy. Now you've triggered another question in my head, I'm often hearing security, and this will get into like kind of your advice from the GigaOm side, and then also Nicole, kind of what you're hearing and seeing from customers and whatnot is we often hear, I got a lot of technology or security priorities, right? I got a lot of different problems to solve and investments to make, and a lot of times I hear, well, then why NDR? Like, why now? Right? Of all the investments I can make, why would I need an NDR? And then we've talked about, like, obviously efficiency and speed of defense, and attackers are living in the chaos that is the network as we've defined it. And that's great, but talk to me a little bit about beyond the detection and response that is in NDR. Like, why else would a CISO consider NDR or invest? Like, what are some of the things that you guys are hearing and seeing relative to, like, what's the tangential value derived from NDR?
Would point to its ability to close visibility gaps, because that's ultimately what the C-suite wants, right? They want to know. They want no dark corners in the room. They don't want a flashlight. They want a floodlight mounted on the ceiling, shining light in every direction. And that's what NDR can do. EDR, SIEM, SOAR, XDR. You combine all that together, you're still missing, that security triad, right? You've got your endpoint telemetry, you've got your correlations, but then what about the lateral movements? What about east, west, north, south, right?
What are you hearing, Nicole?
I agree with what Chris mentioned. I would also add that I think NDR is often the last line of defense, or in some cases the first line of defense. But we all know, EDR, there's SIM, there's IDS, there's all these other tools that usually detect things first, depending on the location of where they're at and things like that. But I see NDR as your last line of defense a lot of times, and they often catch things that other solutions don't, because the network is necessary to execute any attack. In my opinion, you can't you can't reach, an attacker can't reach their target without the network. And so for that reason alone, I would say NDR is pivotal to any security stack.
I
Yeah,
hear. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say they're kind of universally all facing the same challenge: skill shortage, lean teams, too much work. NDR can amplify the effectiveness of what you have, who you have right now. They can validate, specifically looking at segmentation controls. They can reduce dwell times. It's how you add an NDR solution onto your security tech stack, and now you've layered and you're raising the standard of your cyber resilience. They love that word, right? Anything you can do to improve your cyber resilience um, is going to be a win in the eyes of your board or your C-suite or your whatever leadership you want to talk about.
I'm hearing 3 value props from you all based on the conversation so far. So one being, why NDR? One, Chris, you said visibility, right? I think of like reducing exposure. Give me a floodlight so I can see, right, what's going on my network. It's like that's about for the purposes of reducing exposure to an attack or whatever it might be. Second thing you guys said earlier was speed. Chris, you said hunting threats at machine speed. Attackers move fast, they hide in the chaos. That's like I think of that as removing latency. Removing latency in any kind of processes or from a detection, investigation, response. I think you alluded to investigation speed and efficiency, Nicole. And then the third, I love the skills shortage, because there's this element of how do you maximize the talent you have in place, right?
Yep. Always.
And this is where AI comes in too, Chris, to your point about AI as a way of analyzing data at machine speed for the purposes of what? That's why I kept asking you guys why, right? It's like, yeah, because attackers move fast, because they're savvy and stealthy, et cetera, et cetera. And we got some super talented people. NDR plays a critical role in maximizing that talent, right? Enable them to do what they need to do. And so far through this conversation, we've talked a lot about defense, like attackers bypassing EDR, hiding in the noise, progressing and moving laterally. Chris, in your research and conversations, well, both of you, I'll throw it out there. Chris, you brought up the word resilience, and this is what triggered this thought for me is like, what about, I hear a lot about proactive defense. I need to shift the SOC from being always reactive to being more proactive. Now, if you maximize talent and you detect the threats faster and you defend faster, obviously you're freeing up time to be hopefully proactive or preemptive in some cases. What's the role of NDR in that world?
Yeah. So when you're talking about like we just said, right? You're amplifying the value of your human resources. And I don't mean that like HR. I mean like you have humans and they are absolutely a resource. Their expertise and skill cannot be replicated by AI. They cannot be replicated by a vendor solution. The challenge though is their expertise and skill is often backburnered because they're doing the things that can be handled by a good tech solution, by a good NDR, by good EDR. And they don't get to do what humans are good at. So, for instance, threat hunting. Threat hunting can be taught. Threat hunting can be extremely effective at being a proactive defender. But how much time in an organization, even I'd say especially in a smaller organization, how much time is spent being proactive and hunting for threats? Smaller organizations, probably none. Less than 5% of the time across a year is spent being proactive in threat hunting. And that's because they're doing those things that honestly should be handled by technology. They're too busy doing those repeated tasks. They're too busy correlating things that take time and it's expensive from a cognitive standpoint. So NDR, layered obviously in defense with everything else. Hopefully that gives you time to do what humans are good at and identify patterns in a human way. That's blending in the context of the organization, the tribal knowledge that only a human can really have by looking at the whole picture and being more proactive. That's, in my opinion, that's probably the number one way NDR helps. I'd love to hear from you guys on your technical thoughts of what NDR can enable from that perspective. But to me, that's really it.
Yeah. Nicole, proactive. Can NDR, I mean, the definition, network detection and response. And like even that acronym is like detection is, a threat actor, an adversary has gotten onto your network, it's detected and it's responded to. It's very reactive by definition. But I'm like, we hear a lot about proactive defense and wanting to be proactive. Chris, I love your points about freeing up talent to be proactive, threat hunting being one. Nicole, other examples or things you've heard about the role of NDR in a proactive defense world?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with what you guys have said in terms of threat hunting. I think it's also important for an NDR to scale with, your SOC team, especially for larger enterprises, to be able to see everything in real time, across regions, across different accounts. Again, meaning, active identities or machines or even cloud identities, are a little more nuanced. So all of that together in one picture, as we said, as Chris mentioned, the whole puzzle piece, that enables SOC teams to be more proactive by seeing everything at once and not just seeing it, but actually correlating, the behavior across all of those different detections or activities. I think that will help in terms of like prioritization of a threat for better response and investigation purposes. And then also, AI will help. We already touched on this, but AI helps a lot with that as well in terms of being more proactive. So
Yeah.
So I wanted to ask, I have my opinion on this. I'd love to hear from you guys. What's your take on predictive analytics? Because that's kind of where we're going with this, right?
Yeah, I
What
think
What do you
predictive is
think?
I think it's the ultimate, North Star of proactive security. I think it's kind of in the same vein as like the fully automated SOC. Maybe it's even, I'm not a big believer in the SOC will be fully automated. I think the human's always going to be in the loop because humans think critically and they problem solve really well. But predictive analytics, I think there's work to be done, especially as I think attackers are so savvy that they're never changing. That I think AI will play a huge role in that. But I think from a predictive standpoint, you got Chris. You were bringing this up during the threat hunting stuff. Like you were talking about, technology should do that stuff for you, right? You shouldn't have to like go through and triage a bunch of alerts and do correlation. He's like, technology is supposed to do that for you. And I'm like, well, then why isn't everybody using technology to do that so that they can free up their time? And I'm like, I think there's like this is going to foray into another podcast, I'm sure. But in my mind, I think we still have to get over a little bit of a trust hurdle when it comes to AI and predictive and all this sort of stuff. It's like, do people really trust it? Right? Do they
Yeah,
understand how AI is arriving at the answers it's arriving at? And I think that's going to come over time. Right? There's this,
yeah, and
we can get into, yeah, we could get a whole discussion about trust and transparency. Is like, are vendors transparent about how their AI works and what it's doing so a defender can trust it? Right? The answers it's giving. So that's a whole predictive
yeah.
goes
I
down that
I
route. Do I
promise
trust
you,
this thing to
Woj.
predict?
I won't get into it now. We'll save it for another time. But I am seeing some really exciting developments in that, and it's
Yeah.
really simple. It's straightforward. Vendors are they're giving the AI the ability to rationalize their results, and I love that. This is AI says, this is my verdict, and this is how I arrived at that verdict.
Yeah.
And the human can then look at it and say, oh, okay, no, there was a mistake made here. That's not a critical asset. That's
Yeah.
not actually in production. That's not actually a threat because it's mitigated in another way that it's not aware of. So getting that rationale in there, it seems like it should have been there from day one. It hasn't been for years,
Nope.
but I am seeing it now, not just in NDR, but other technologies implementing AI. There's a companion now, an AI rationalization feature.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. That's a whole other 30-minute conversation, if not more.
Oh, yeah.
But we'd love to have you. Anyway, we've gone 30 minutes. This is awesome. This has been a great conversation. I think I love to sum these up. We talked about a lot, right? Like, what is the network? What's the role of network detection and response? How is it evolving? What are the value outcomes of using it? But I want you guys to sum up in three ways. Give me 3 takeaways from this conversation. 3 things you're walking away with, or 3 pieces of advice you would give relative to NDR to people that have tuned into this. Chris, I'll
So I'll
start with you.
start. Yeah, I'll start with the C-suite, the CISO. Um, if you're trying to acquire an NDR, you need to get money for it. Either it's green money, it's new budget, or it's brown money. You're shifting it from somewhere else, or it's a combination of them, right? You probably don't control the purse. You have to go to somebody and ask them for this money. It's probably going to be leadership, a CISO maybe. From their perspective, if you want to talk about why NDR, you could say it reduces alert fatigue. That's a huge problem. It improves the efficiency of your security operations. It gives you an opportunity to be proactive, like we talked about, right? Um, it empowers that proactive defense by providing context-rich alerts and automated
Yeah.
remediation options. It closes the visibility gaps. There's like all sorts of different things you can talk about there that the C-suite loves to hear. That is like, yeah, okay, open up the wallet. How much do you need? Let's do this because it sounds like it's going to be really impactful to us.
Awesome. Nicole, 3 takeaways.
I would say first NDR, this is what I live and breathe in. So Woj is familiar with this, Chris, but NDR provides the necessary coverage, to your point, Chris, of closing visibility gaps across the entire network. So not just the traditional on-prem data centers, but across the hybrid network, if you will. It provides the clarity that SOC teams need to be proactive, to have all of the context that they need at their fingertips in real time to act. And then just the third thing would be control, maximizing. Again, we talked about this, but maximizing the SOC team's, skill set, tool set with NDR. So then ultimately to reduce risk and to stop an attack.
God, you guys, I love Chris took the CISO angle, Nicole took the SOC analyst angle. So there's like great way to sum up the conversation. I took a bunch of notes. I think there's like, we'd love to foray this into additional conversations with you, Chris, because we can go into some other cool stuff you guys are working on and what you're hearing. But I just want to say thank you both for being on the show. This has been awesome. Super insightful, super helpful. Everybody for tuning in, thank you for tuning in. Comment, like, share, throw. I always say this. It's like, we love debating. We didn't do a lot of debating on this. I thought you
Did
guys,
not.
you were all agreeing with
Pretty
everything. It's like,
blinded.
Well,
I wanted
I'm
to
a network
debate.
guy. I'm not gonna,
Yeah, you're a fanboy like me, so it's like, we're not gonna debate. Maybe we should have some counter arguments
let's bring a
made, but
developer into the next one.
yeah, exactly. That would be perfect. But anyway, debate, throw comments out there, debate what you heard today. We love it. I think debate and conversation is what's going to move everybody forward in this world, and especially in the worlds we live in, cybersecurity and attacks. But yeah, thank you both. This was great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Woj.
All right.
Thanks, Nicole.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.